just to conclude, how do we renew our spirit? How do we renew our faith and how do we renew our spirit? So 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 6. I thank God whom I serve with a pure conscience as my forefathers did. As without ceasing I remember you in my prayers night and day. Verse 4. Greatly desiring to see in you, being mindful of your tears that I may be filled with joy. When I call to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you, which dwelt first in your grandmother Louis and your father Eunice, and I am persuaded is in you also. Therefore I remind you, stir up the gifts of God which is in you. So being filled in God's Spirit means a renewal, right? The word fill means there's a liquid or solution or something that has to be filled. It's a process, right? It's a process of being filled with God's Spirit. So one thing I've realized even just the last few weeks is the power in your testimony. What I mean by that is the way God will stir up and build faith in one another by testimonies. By sharing your testimony, it means you encourage and build someone up. Quick story, right? Again, a personal story of mine. Just about a month ago, my cousins had come down from Germany and they're planning on getting married. So they met with us and they were asking us about, costs and like vendors and stuff like that. And they were mortified with the prices here as well. They were just like, oh, it's so expensive. Like, we can't even begin to have a wedding. And me and Kay just sat with them and we were just sharing our stories. We were just sharing God's goodness and God's testimonies in our lives with them. We didn't have answers for some of the things they had, but I was like, this is what God did for us, how God came through for us. And one, they could have easily got upset and jealous and they're like, oh my gosh, like see these people, right? But the moment while we were talking, my cousin stopped, he looked at me and he was saying, just by being here, just by hearing you all speak, something is happening to me. He said, my faith is being restored, right? Because when he came to Sri Lanka and he saw the obstacle or the situation in front of him, he thought it was impossible. He thought, how can I afford a wedding, right? He and his wife-to-be are going to be the ones paying for it, he said. So how can I do it? And he came that day deflated, broken, confused on how to do it. And just by me and Kay sharing, not even about God like that, but just sharing our testimony, right? And saying the same God who did it for me will do it for you, right? It's not that I have a special connection, like I don't. I'm just average. But I know the same God who did it for me has the same power to do it for you. I know the same God who did it in the Bible has the same power to do it for you. The same God who parted the Red Sea by His word, the same God who rose Jesus back from the dead, that same power, right? It hasn't diminished at all over the years because it is the same, right? As that beam says, Jesus Christ the same, yesterday, today, and forever, right? So that is the same God you and I serve. So if He did it for me and He did it for you and He did it for you and He did it for you, what's to say He won't do it for all of us, right? I refuse to let people say, no, God He doesn't care, He doesn't love. I believe, church, even in the book Zechariah, see, the biggest problem was the people. The people walked away from God. I walked away from God. You walked away from God. And then we blame God, right? God is here, right? I was reading an interesting story is, this old couple and they see this young couple and they're driving and the girl is like, head on the guy's shoulder. Personally, I hate that. I think that's really bad for driving. I'm just like, go away, right? I'm not a fan, right? But the lady asked her husband, she is like, how come we don't do that anymore, right? And the husband said, I was never the one that moved because he's driving, right? So she moved away. It's the same concept. With God, He never moved, right? But we moved away and then we let guilt and shame and all these things bombard our thoughts and say you're not good enough and you're worthless and God doesn't love you. And we let all these things fester in our mind and the church doesn't make it easy also. Do you get what I'm trying to say? You and I, sometimes we add to this. And God is saying in Zechariah chapter 1, He's saying, I am chasing you. See, God doesn't need us. He wants us. The difference between a need and a want is I need rice, but I don't want rice. But what I want, I'll desire and I'll pursue and I'll run after. Like I will run after like a crispy chicken burger, like I will, right? If someone was holding it in a car and said, if you catch this, you win it, I would run after the burger. But if he held a bag of rice, I'm not going to run after the bag of rice. Like I'm just very personal, right? It's personal to me. That crispy chicken burger is what I'll run after, right? The same way, God doesn't need you. He wants you. He'll run after you. He'll pursue you. But you and I have a choice. Do we want to be pursued by God? Do we want that love? Because it's not by might. It's not by power. it's only by His Spirit.